Let's study 10th standard ICSE biology chapter 12, endocrine system. There is a need for the regulation of body activities which is done by two control systems, the hormonal control system and the nervous control system. In this chapter, we shall study the hormonal control system or the endocrine system, but let's quickly study the difference between the two systems. Hormonal control system is usually comparatively slower, whereas the nervous system is very fast. Imagine if you touch a hot object, you respond to it by lifting away your hand very quickly. Second difference is that hormones are transmitted chemically through the blood. Hormones are chemicals. They are secreted by the hormonal glands directly into the blood. And the blood carries it to all the parts of the body, including the target organs. Nerve impulses are transmitted electrochemically through nerve fibers and chemically across the synapses. Synapses are junction between two neurons. We shall study the nervous system in detail in some other chapter. Point number 3 is cancelled. Hormonal control, the effect is either short-term or long-lasting. For example, your heart may beat faster. That is a short-term change in your body. And long-lasting, for example, your height may grow. That's irreversible and long-lasting. Nervous control, well, such changes are always short-lived. So hormonal control can affect growth of your body or some tissues and glands and organs of your body. But nervous control cannot affect your growth of the body. It can bring about specific chemical changes and regulates metabolism, whereas this does not influence any chemical changes and cannot regulate metabolism. Hormonal control cannot be modified by learning from previous experience, whereas nervous control can be modified. You can change your reaction time by practice and by previous experience. You can learn some reflex actions. They are called conditioned reflex actions. For example, you can type messages in your mobile phone even without looking at the keypad now because you are on your mobile phone whole day chatting with your friends. Now, hormones, as I said, are released by endocrine glands. They're also called ductless glands because they don't have ducts. This is a pituitary gland. It releases the hormones directly into the blood. It does not have any duct like the salivary gland, if you remember. For example, look at this gallbladder or the liver out here. This is a common bile duct which secretes bile juice into the small intestine. So these are duct glands. So they release enzymes. Whereas the hormonal glands like the pituitary gland or thyroid gland or the adrenal gland or the pancreas, they release hormones directly into the blood. So they are ductless glands. By the way, the pancreas is both exocrine and endocrine. It releases pancreatic juice for digestion, which is released into the small intestine via this pancreatic duct, which you can see here. And there are certain tissues. So there are certain tissues in the pancreas, which the cells called islets of Langerhans, they secrete hormones directly into the blood. Now let's study some general properties of hormones. They're secreted directly into the blood. They regulate the physiological processes, that is physical processes. They act on target organs or cells. So even though the blood will carry the hormones to all the parts of the body, they don't affect all the parts of the body. They affect only the target organs or cells. For example, insulin simply changes the blood sugar level. It decreases the blood sugar level. It has no other effect on the body. Glucagon will stimulate the liver to convert the stored glycogen into glucose, which will in turn increase the blood sugar level or blood glucose level. So even though glucagon hormone is released into the blood by the pancreas and it will be carried all over the body, yet it will affect only specific organs in a specific way. Hormones produced in one species usually show similar influence in other species. So testosterone, it increases the rate of metabolism. If you inject a horse with testosterone, then a similar effect will be seen in a horse as well. They are very biologically very active. That means even in small quantities, they can affect us. For example, adrenaline. If you inject a syringe full of adrenaline, it can cause death. It is so powerful. Chemically, some hormones are peptides, amines, or steroids. So we have 3 classes of hormones: peptides, amines, and steroids. Peptides, that is, they are proteins. Example, insulin. They are water soluble. Amines, well, that means they are derived from amino acids. Example, adrenaline. Again, they are also water soluble. But steroids, they are derived from cholesterol. Example of such a hormone is testosterone. Now, such hormones are not water soluble, they are lipid soluble, that is fat soluble. Excess, that is hypersecretion, or deficiency, that is hyposecretion of these hormones, can lead to serious consequences. And hormones are not stored in the body. After their work is over, they are always excreted from the system. So the urine may have various hormones, which helps us to test many things. For example, during pregnancy, by a urine test, we can find out if a particular hormone is being released, which can confirm pregnancy. We are going to study just the 4 main endocrine glands of the body. So let's start with the adrenal gland. As you can see, it's a cap-shaped gland on top of each kidney. This has a central region, middle region called medulla, and the peripheral region is called the cortex. Medulla releases many hormones. Main out of that is adrenaline, which we shall study. And the cortex releases many corticoids, many types of corticoids, hormones. Now let's start with adrenal medulla. Adrenaline, a very popular hormone, well known among the masses. It is also called epinephrine. Cancel noradrenaline because that's a totally different hormone. It is called the fight or flight hormone because it gives us the extra energy to face a crisis situation. Whenever we are excited or angry or we have a strong emotional response, adrenaline is the reason behind it. The gland itself is stimulated by the autonomic nervous system, about which we shall study in another chapter, the nervous control chapter. As the name suggests, autonomic nervous system is autonomous. It is not in our control. It takes care of internal reflex actions, like increasing the heartbeat, increasing the blood supply during crisis. Some of the changes which adrenaline brings about in our body are as follows. The heart can beat faster and the blood pressure increases. What is the reason behind this? Well, so that more glucose and oxygen can be pumped to the muscles and we can feel it by the thumping of our heart. If you see a tiger in front of you, you will need extra energy to run as fast as you possibly could, which requires a lot of energy, a lot of glucose and oxygen to your muscles, and that is why adrenaline is released. It gives you a thrill sensation. Next, breathing center of the brain is activated by adrenaline. This breathing center is located in the medulla oblongata of the brain. So what would happen is that we would start breathing fast and deeply. This will increase the oxygenation of the blood and rapid removal of carbon dioxide, and we feel it as panting, breathing heavily. Next, arterioles of the skin, very tiny arterioles, they will be constricted because of adrenaline, so that there is less blood going to the skin, because most of the blood is being directed towards the muscles. The muscles need the blood right now to escape the predator. The effect is that the person will turn pale. So such a give reason can be asked. On the other hand, the arterioles of the digestive system are also constricted because again, the blood supply to the digestive system is decreased. Right now, it's not important to digest food. It's important that you don't get digested by the tiger. So this can be experienced with a dry mouth. So if you enter an examination hall and you are really nervous, you may suddenly feel very thirsty in a dry mouth because the blood supply to your digestive system, which includes your salivary glands, is constricted, is restricted. Muscles of the body, well, they will become tense. They are ready for immediate action. And you can even feel the tense feeling and the shivering of the muscles. Liver, well, just like glucagon, even adrenaline will convert the glycogen to glucose. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose for emergencies, and now excess of glucose is released because your body will need it. Similarly, fat deposits under your skin, surrounding your organs, they will be converted into fatty acids, so even they are available for muscle contraction. Many other changes happen, like increasing clotting capacity of the blood. The pupils of the eye are dilated so that more light can enter your eye and you can see even in darkness as clearly as possible. Uterine contraction will happen during labor, that is during the delivery of the baby. It also stimulates muscles of the hair follicle, so your hair stands at the end. This is called piloerection. These functions are exactly the same as the sympathetic autonomic nervous system, which we shall study in the nervous system chapter. So the functions of adrenaline, quickly, a summary of it, the most important functions are it increases heartbeat, it increases blood supply to the muscles and decreases to the skins, and this makes sure that more glucose is released into the blood by the liver. The next part of the adrenal gland is the cortex. It releases hormones like cortisone. Cortisone is an example of a glucocorticoid. Its function is to suppress inflammation, that is the swelling, to suppress it. Now, the corticoid hormones are of various types. We've got mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and sex corticoids. Mineralocorticoids, they regulate the mineral metabolism, especially of sodium and potassium ions. Glucocorticoids, they regulate the carbohydrate, protein, and fat metabolism. So generally speaking, all these corticoids or cortical hormones, they perform the following 4 functions: increase the blood glucose concentration or influence the fat and protein metabolism, regulate the salt and water balance in the body, and adapt the body to stresses such as extreme heat or cold, burns, infections, etc. So whenever you are in an extreme situation, your body can adapt to that situation and survive because of these cortical hormones. We also have something called sex corticoids because they behave like sex hormones. They are not sex hormones. Sex hormones are testosterone and estrogen, etc. But the sex corticoids also can behave like sex hormones, that is male as well as female hormones. And overgrowth of the cortex in young children leads to premature sexual maturity. At a very young age, a child may become sexually mature, fertile, and active because of the overgrowth of cortex, adrenal cortex, which will result in over-secretion of sex corticoids. In fact, if too much of sex corticoids are released, then a mature woman will start developing male characteristics, because since they will behave like sex hormones, they will bring about sexual characteristics like beard, mustache, and deep male voice in a female. This condition is called adrenal virilism. Similarly, in men, if there is over-secretion, then they will have feminine characteristics such as enlargement of breasts, that is on their chest. Next, let's study some diseases caused by hyposecretion and hypersecretion respectively of the cortex. That is, we are talking about corticoids here. A hyposecretion or less secretion will cause Addison's disease, and the symptoms are loss of energy, skin pigmentation, loss of weight, nausea, that is feel like vomiting, hypoglycemia, that is low blood sugar, sensitivity to cold and pain, increased susceptibility to infections, that is weakness. Hypersecretion of adrenal cortex causes Cushing syndrome. So don't be confused here, 2 different diseases here. Cushing syndrome means obesity. Hyperglycemia, that is high blood sugar. Remember, hyperglycemia is also a symptom of diabetes mellitus. Osteoporosis, that is weak bones, weakness, salt and water retention. The next hormonal gland is pancreas. Remember, it's exocrine and endocrine both. Pancreas has a group of hormone secreting cells called islets of Langerhans. They produce 3 hormones: insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin, but somatostatin is not in our syllabus. Let's study insulin. Insulin, I hope you're marking the functions everywhere according to the pics given. Insulin secreted by beta cells, the islets of Langerhans, can have alpha, beta, or delta cells. The beta cells produce insulin, the alpha cells produce glucagon. This hormone checks the rise of sugar level in the blood. But how? In 2 ways. It promotes glucose utilization by the body cells. That is, the body will use the excess of glucose. Or it will stimulate the deposition of extra glucose of the blood as glycogen in liver and muscles. So the extra glucose is removed from the blood and stored as glycogen in liver and muscles. So these are the 2 ways in which insulin helps in decreasing the sugar level in the blood. Don't write the function as insulin converts glucose into glycogen. No. Insulin stimulates the conversion of glucose into glycogen in the liver. You have to be very specific in science answers. Now, what would happen with the undersecretion of insulin? If there is an insufficient secretion of insulin, it will cause a disease called diabetes mellitus, which means that the blood sugar level will be so high that there will be high concentration of sugar in the blood. So the symptom is called hyperglycemia. Remember, it was a symptom of Cushing's syndrome also out here. It excretes a great deal of urine loaded with sugar. There is so much glucose, that is sugar, in the blood that even the urine, which is actually a waste produced by filtering the blood, urine which is normally not supposed to have sugar or glucose, it will have it because of diabetes. And the person urinates so often that he feels thirsty all the time, and he will also lose weight and become weaker and weaker. A person may even lose eyesight or vision. So the treatment is administer insulin. If your pancreas is not producing insulin, then you'll have to take injections of insulin. But it's not a cure. It's not curable. We can only check the blood sugar level by a test. There's a machine which just takes a sample of the blood and checks the blood sugar level after each meal. And if it's too high, then just take a shot of insulin. But remember, if you accidentally take too much insulin, that the blood sugar level will go so low that you will fall unconscious. You may even undergo coma. In such a case, by the way, this case is called insulin shock. In such a case, the patient should be given a prompt bite of sweet biscuits or sugar candy. Even Oreo silk may help. But hey, in such a situation, you can't really be choosy. Such a condition of low blood sugar, which may also happen because of over-secretion of insulin, is called hypoglycemia, which, if you remember, was a condition of Addison's disease as well. Next, glucagon. Well, as I suggested earlier, it's the opposite of insulin. And insulin will stimulate the glucose uptake from blood and stimulates the glycogen formation and storage in the liver and muscles. Glucagon will stimulate the glycogen breakdown, so it will raise the blood sugar. So whenever there is a low blood sugar level, a feedback goes to the pancreas, which starts releasing a lot of glucagon, the alpha cells that is, which stimulates the glycogen breakdown. This will raise the blood sugar level. But if there is high blood sugar level after digestion, that will give you feedback to the pancreas, the beta cells of the islands of Langerhans, which will produce insulin, which will help in decreasing the blood sugar level. So this is a feedback loop. It's called negative feedback mechanism. If the blood sugar level is too high, then insulin is released. And if the blood sugar level falls low, then the production of insulin is stopped. And instead glucagon is released. The next gland is thyroid gland. It produces many hormones like thyroxine and calcitonin, but we don't have calcitonin in our syllabus. Now its location is situated in front of the neck, just below the larynx. Larynx is the voice box. This is the larynx. Now you have to write the location word to word. If you miss even a preposition here, you'll get 0. Its main function is that it regulates the basal metabolism, that is the rate of cellular oxidation resulting in heat production at rest. Even when you are resting, metabolism will happen. Energy is being released in your body even when you are resting. This minimum level of metabolism is called basal metabolism, which is controlled by thyroxine. An increase in the secretion will increase metabolism and vice versa. Thyroxine is very important in general growth of the body, ossification, that is formation of bones, maintaining the body temperature, and mental development, especially in children. What happens if there is undersecretion or hypothyroidism? Well, we've got 3 main diseases to study. Simple goiter, as you can see, is the enlargement of the thyroid and is visible as a swelling in the neck. Why does this happen? Well, if the diet lacks iodine, especially in the Himalayan regions, in the Himalayan region, the water is so fresh that the mineral content is very less, due to which the food there is deficient in iodine. When iodine is a very major component of thyroxine, and without thyroxine, the thyroid gland will enlarge, leading to simple goiter. Next, cretinism. It's a condition which affects the growth of children, which show dwarfism and mental retardation. This is due to defective development or early atrophy or degeneration of the thyroid, due to which the gland's hormones are not being released. Myxedema is a condition that affects an adult if his thyroid does not function properly in this condition. So cretinism was in children and myxedema is in adults. So the person will become sluggish or lazy with swelling of the face and hands. No, your sluggishness is not because of myxedema, you are lazy. Oversecretion, hyperthyroidism will result in exophthalmic goiter, which means that the person has very high metabolic rate, hyperactive, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, eyes are protruded, and it forms a goiter in the neck, which is not clearly visible here. And finally, the pituitary gland, the master gland. It is a small projection about the size of a pea. Yeah, size doesn't matter. Which hangs from the base of the forebrain below the hypothalamus. So right in the center of your brain approximately there is a hypothalamus, and hanging from it is a pea-sized gland called pituitary gland, which will have a posterior pituitary, the anterior pituitary, and the intermediate lobe. In human beings, the intermediate lobe is so thin that it hardly has any function. Anterior means in front, so your eyes are out here, and posterior is the back portion. So in exam, when you are asked the hormonal gland which produces a particular hormone, you have to specify anterior or posterior, or for adrenal gland you have to mention medulla or cortex. You have to give the perfect hormones from anterior pituitary gland. Number 1, growth hormone, also called somatotropin. Its deficiency can cause dwarfism. The person is healthy, it's fully developed and mature, just the body proportions are that of a child. But what if there is an over secretion in childhood? That will result in gigantism, huge legs and hands. In fact, all parts of the body. If there is over secretion of the growth hormone in adult, see, after you are an adult, your height cannot grow. So now if there is an over secretion of growth hormone, what will grow are simply the bones of your face and the hands and the feet. Your nose will become large and your lips will become thick. This condition is called acromegaly. No, Shrek did not have this disease. Next hormone, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, also called thyrotropic hormone. It's a hormone which activates the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. Similarly, the anterior pituitary gland produces gonadotropic hormones like FSH and LH, that is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which will regulate the activities of testes and ovaries, the reproductive organs. Also, ACTH or adrenocorticotropic hormone is released, which regulates the activity of adrenal cortex, which produces the corticoid hormones. So indirectly, pituitary gland is controlling the other glands of hormones. That's why it's called the master gland. Remember, tropic hormone always means a hormone which stimulates other endocrine glands. Next, hormones from posterior pituitary gland. Well, the posterior lobe produces two hormones, antidiuretic hormone or ADH and oxytocin. Now, ADH is also called vasopressin, which you must have studied in the excretory system chapter. It constricts the blood vessels with rise in blood pressure. It also acts on the kidney, increasing reabsorption of water from the kidney tubules. You know, kidney tubules where the ultrafiltration happened and urine was produced. So during summer, ADH is produced so that more water is reabsorbed and urine is thicker. We can't afford to lose a lot of water during summer. In cold weather, we can afford to lose a lot of water. We urinate a lot because ADH hormone is not released much in cold weather. But if a person has deficiency of ADH, even during summer, ADH is not being produced, that means he will suffer from diabetes insipidus or water diabetes. Since he will not be able to reabsorb water, the urine will have a lot of water. He will urinate very frequently and the urine will be tasteless, not salty, which is usually the case. This is called water diabetes, which is different from sugar diabetes, if you remember. That was due to deficiency of insulin. And in that case, the urine had glucose. One similar thing is that in both cases, the people urinate a lot. Oxytocin, also called the love hormone, it stimulates vigorous contractions of the uterus in a pregnant mother, thus helping in delivery of baby. If you remember, even adrenaline had a similar function. It has one more function, it also stimulates milk ejection. And by the way, it creates a loving bond between the mother and the child after delivery. It affects your emotions. So next time somebody hates you a lot, give them a shot of oxytocin. Next, negative feedback. I've already explained that with the help of the diagram of insulin and pancreas. So whenever something is increasing in the body, then a message is sent to the gland for appropriate action. For example, TSH level. Since TSH, that is the thyroid stimulating hormone, is released by the thyroid glands, it will help the thyroid glands to release a lot of thyroxine. But if the amount of thyroxine in the blood increases, automatically feedback will go to the pituitary gland to stop the production of TSH level. So now the thyroid gland won't be stimulated and the release of thyroxine will be decreased. But if it decreases too much, then again a feedback will go to the thyroid, to the pituitary gland to start producing TSH. So that's called a negative feedback. Positive feedback is very rare, but it may happen. For example, when you are in labor and you have uterine contraction, your womb starts contracting during childbirth. So the normal state of uterus is uncontracted. So when one contraction happens, then the hormones will not try to stop it. In fact, a feedback will be sent which will increase the contractions. This is called positive feedback, which will continue till the delivery is completed. So let's understand the negative feedback mechanism with the help of this flow chart. The hypothalamus produces thyroid releasing hormone, which stimulates the thyroid stimulating hormone, which stimulates the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. If there is very less thyroxine, then these hormones are released. But if there is a lot of thyroxine being produced, a negative feedback goes to the respective glands stating, stop, I'm in sufficient quantity now, don't stimulate me more. This table is super IMP. This is the starting point of this chapter. When you learn it, it covers all the locations, hormones, functions, and diseases in a tabular format. So a quick recap here. Adrenal cortex has mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoid, and sex corticoid. Some examples are given in brackets. You need to learn all of that. The functions are given and the diseases. Please understand which is an undersecretion disease and which is an oversecretion disease. Roman numbers will help you to match it. Addison's disease, Roman number 1, so that's mineralocorticoids undersecretion. Roman number 2, Cushing's syndrome is related to glucocorticoid, and adrenal virilism, Roman number 3 is related to sex corticoid oversecretion. Then we have the pancreas, the beta cells and the alpha cells only, and the functions are given. Thyroid, thyroxine function. Pituitary gland. It releases so many hormones. We've already studied growth hormone, also called somatotropin or GH, and the diseases, of course. Now, prolactin is another hormone. It promotes the lactation or milk formation and secretion. If you remember, oxytocin had a similar function. It helps in milk ejection. ACTH, it stimulates the secretion of adrenal cortex. Its hyposecretion will cause pigmentation in Addison's disease. Now, if you remember, the gonadotrophic hormones were of two types, FSH and LH. FSH, well, it helps in the growth of Graafian follicles, which we'll study in the reproductive system chapter. They are you can say, the birthplace of the egg cells, the female gametes. And it also helps in the secretion of estrogen, the female hormone, which gives all the female characteristics to females. And in males, it helps in spermatogenesis, which means production of sperms in the testes. The luteinizing hormone in females helps in ovulation, that is the release of the egg cell once a month approximately. And to maintain the corpus luteum, you see, after the egg cell is released, the Graafian follicle becomes the corpus luteum to produce a hormone called progesterone. We'll study this in reproductive system chapter. This progesterone hormone is very important because it will help maintaining the lining of the womb. It will help pregnancy. Without progesterone, there will be miscarriage or abortion. Vasopressin, it helps in reabsorption of water from kidneys. By the way, LH also helps in testosterone secretion in males, which gives them the male characteristics. It's a male sexual hormone, testosterone, and the female sexual hormone is estrogen, by the way. We have some diseases for ADH, hyposecretion causes water diabetes, and oxytocin.
Hi students, this is AJ sir. If you like this video, press the like button. If you would like to enroll for my online test series or online lectures, email me or message me on Instagram. Check the description for more information.